So one thing that I learned while I was doing tests for this stream is that unfortunately, I'm not able to switch the game that I'm playing midstream, which would be very convenient, especially if I were to do something like doing a little bit of playing Warframe for everyone who's at the channel for Warframe, and then doing a little bit of playing of something else for me. That would be my ideal scenario, but the PlayStation 5 software doesn't seem to have that capability. Yeah, something I've been thinking of doing for streaming is to do various playthroughs of different playthroughs of Lies of P, because I've gone through the game twice now. I've done my standard run through with the rapier weapon, the wintry rapier, and I have done a second private playthrough where I've used the scythe weapon in that game, and that was very fun. I very much believe that the scythe is going to be my top tier weapon when playing, or at least in my memory. But yeah, what would happen right now is if I switched over to Lies of P, the stream would stop. It would just hard stop, just like it did on the PlayStation 4. And then you guys would have to come back in, look for a new notification of me going live, and deal with things from there. And that's a pain in the butt for you all. I really would have thought that that specific issue would have been fixed with the PlayStation 5 because of how much more focused the PlayStation 5 was with all of its launch messaging on improving the sharing aspects, the socializing aspects of the game, of the console. And it does sort of seem like the ball was dropped in this one particular regard. Yeah. Oh, absolutely, Maihara. But, and this is kind of true for all the video game consoles, they all wanted walled gardens for the longest time. They still do. Nintendo especially really wants a walled garden for all of its own IP, but has grown extremely lax with what other IP it allows on its system, because it's no longer competing with other consoles. All of the consoles are competing with mobile phones and Steam. Mobile phones are the vast majority of the market, and Steam is the rest of the market for hardcore gaming. Console gaming, like me, is actually surprisingly, it's the cost-effective, cheap way to play just a few games, mostly a few free-to-play titles. You do one large drop once to actually get the console, with the company usually selling at a loss, and then you have access to all of the free-to-play titles, and you keep playing that console for like 5 to 6 years. But yes, essentially in terms of walled garden status, basically if you are the industry leader in any given console cycle, that's when you really want to prioritize your status as a walled garden. When you are the underdogs, that's when you start promoting services, accessibility, connection with other players, and it swaps back and forth. They switch what that messaging is whenever they aren't the front runner. When the Nintendo Wii was the front runner, absolutely Nintendo was all about, even in the social aspects, in the internet aspects, creating that walled garden.
And whose business?
Now they only prioritize a little bit of that connection because they have to be competitive with... They absolutely have to be competitive with what they are seeing.
Let's see what happens.
From the other consoles and from online play. Or like Xbox, with the Game Pass and focusing on community and just having the best deal in gaming to try to attract people with the service. You know that absolutely would not be the case if Sony, if they were the front runner over Sony. I don't think Nintendo is anywhere close to throwing out its hardware as a key aspect of its business. Arguably, not even arguably, compared to any of the other big platforms, Nintendo focuses on hardware as a selling point mainly because it sells different, weird hardware with different control schemes or shapes. Like they really do think of themselves as a toy company, even now, despite being one of the number one makers of complete not toy, like an entirely different class of product. I think the fact that they went with a Switch 2 as opposed to that is still going to be a walled garden and have been planning it for years upon years. I think that is proof enough to me that they do not have any intention of going the way of a pure software developer like Sony and Xbox. Now they may still do that eventually. Not anytime soon, but eventually. Because Xbox has been in a losing position. They weren't able to get Game Pass to be profitable the way it was supposed to be. A lot of the big studios that are associated with what is an Xbox game, unless it's the third-party studios that aren't actually associated with Xbox, but people think of Xbox when they're going to play them, are things like, your Ubisoft open world games. Well, Ubisoft is imploding upon itself as we speak. They've been imploding for like a year and a half now. And their next game, Assassin's Creed Shadows, that's not going to do well. They need that to be the blockbuster #1 most successful video game of all time, and it's not going to be. And the ball's gonna fall on that. It just is. And I honestly, really other third-party but associated with Xbox titles or companies don't really come to mind for me right now. Proof in the pudding. That's probably evidence enough that I can't even think of any other than the one that's having a terrible time. But yeah, so Xbox is more likely than any of them to be the next one to become a software-only developer. They're very likely to go the way of Sega because they have Microsoft behind them. They don't need that kind of they don't need that kind of profit from the gaming sector if it's not the most profit ever. They just need to have low overhead, low cost, relatively speaking, from a video game development standpoint. And if they're going to be losing on consoles, but then not having the titles as people go and do their free-to-play over on Sony and PC, they're going to switch to something. I don't know what that something is, but they need to figure out a way to make medium titles profitable again, but I don't think they have the luxury of being able to do that when everything is about investment capital on the size of Microsoft, but not getting the payouts Microsoft is expected to get.
This should be fun.
Sony then, while we're thinking about it, Sony is also starting to play ball in that they're moving first-party titles over to. They're moving first-party titles over to PC, but only when they have a remaster or a sequel or they're older that creates the opportunity for a sale on consoles. So they're still prioritizing their console business, but they're opening it up to PC more and more. Nintendo, however, Nintendo will always, I believe,
Stay focused.
stick to that
There's a
walled
heavy
garden
unit approaching.
because they know that a Nintendo fan is not exactly the same thing as a video game fan. There are lots of fans of video games in general that love Nintendo, that play Nintendo a lot. I count myself among their number, though I don't do a lot of the things like repurchasing old titles on every console at full price that a lot of Nintendo fans make a point to do. But if you are a Nintendo fan and not a video game fan, they know they have you. They absolutely know they have you. That's why they never do a discount. There's no policy that is consumer friendly that they try to follow. They make their toy, you buy the toy, and then you buy your nostalgia. And that has been the definition of Nintendo's Blue Ocean strategy since the Wii U failed. Because they couldn't create a new toy that competed with the entire market. So instead of compete with the entire market, just make sure that your base continues spending money at the pace you decide they're going to. That's Nintendo's Blue Ocean strategy. It's not provide a unique service. It's provide the only place to get the brand. It is comfort branding.
That mutant
And it's
cat is
genius,
staring at my
to be honest, the
muffins
fact
again.
that they've been able to keep that going for so long. All right, let's socket that Iatan. All right, let's re-up our
It's
buffs.
been broken. Harvest it.
Reminding everyone that I cannot see my buffs. You guys see where my camera is? That is where my camera is on my screen too. Another issue of streaming from the PlayStation 5. We are not able, I am not able to see my own screen in full. I see the exact same screen you guys do. It is kind of like Sony listened to no feedback whatsoever when doing or thinking about any kind of update to its on-platform streaming service.